Chapter Our Arousal Part 1. This series of stories depicts the experiences of other travelers. Their attitudes and actions only represent themselves. I believe that every traveler is different, there are as many faces as there are people, so it's necessary to write these fragmented chapters to introduce and reflect their individual thoughts and personalities. If you're not interested in the stories of other travelers, you can skip the next few chapters, as they have no direct connection to the protagonist. The night was dark and gloomy. The weather was terrible today, even without wind. The early winter night was quite cold. The overcast sky blocked out everything, not a single star was visible, and even the usually bright full moon was nowhere to be seen. On a road heading south from a small town about 2 days' journey north of Xuanhuan city, a group of adventurers were hurrying along. "Captain, do we need to hurry so much?" a thin man asked. "Traveling at night is very dangerous. It used to be dangerous, but lately, the heroes of Xuanhuan have been sweeping the area. Countless numbers of them. Monsters will continue to appear, but their rate of emergence is limited. As for bandits, even the infamous Rovi gang is too scared to show their faces, let alone other. What's there to be afraid of?" The one called Captain was a mid-aged man with a scar on his face. He wore a full suit of armor that had been patched many times, his face weathered but with a look of fortitude and experience. Hearing his companion's concern, he chuckled and explained, "For the time being, within roughly a 5-day journey from Xuanhuan city, even nighttime travel is relatively safe. It's just that the path isn't very clear, it's always a bit unsettling," a burly man carrying an axe said. "And traveling at night, it's easy to get hungry. Once we find the treasure according to the map, no matter how much we find, you'll have a big feast, guaranteed," said the captain. The burly man's face immediately brightened, and he chuckled. Just then the hunter, the scout at the front of the adventuring party, stopped in his tracks, waving his torch as a warning. The adventurers immediately halted, drawing their weapons and standing on guard. They had roamed the world for many years, weathered countless storms. A new danger lurked everywhere. They were prepared to fight even in their sleep, at the slightest hint of movement. "Don't be nervous, I don't have a habit of sneaking up on people," a magnetic, soothing male voice echoed, and a strikingly handsome man emerged from the nearby woods. The man was probably 24 or 5, in the prime of his life, yet he had a head of prematurely graying hair. He wore a ridiculously flamboyant suit, but tied around him was a crimson cloak that clashed wildly with the suit, giving him a somewhat bizarre appearance. Despite the darkness, his equipment emanated a magical aura, illuminating his features and astonishing the adventurers. They had encountered many wealthy individuals over the years, but this was the first time they'd seen someone who had fully enchanted such a suit. Seeing his face, one of the veterans of the adventuring party, the burly Luke, couldn't help but exclaim, "Mr. Locke, what are you doing walking on the road in the middle of the night?" The handsome man blocking their way was none other than the time traveler using the alias Locke, the vampire lord, the master of the magic sword, Tiger. He wasn't surprised that Luke had seen through his disguise, merely sighing softly and saying, "Actually, I didn't want to meet you all under these circumstances, but some things are ultimately my own responsibility." He walked towards them, stopping a few steps away from the hunter. "You're very wary of me. Did you sense my killing intent?" he said to the hunter with a pleasant expression. The hunter didn't answer, only retreating repeatedly until he was back in the group, simultaneously removing his bow from his back and nocking an arrow, ready to shoot at a moment's notice. From the woods where had emerged a sharp yet raspy voice, like the grinding of metal. "Eke! Don't beat around the bush. If you want to emulate the nameless monk and resolve this peacefully, at least get to the point. That old monk wasn't this verbose." "Yeah," a rough voice interjected. "It's bad enough you're out on a midnight errand, and you're dawdling like this. If you want to imitate the old monk, I have no objection, but if you keep this up I won't wait. In my opinion, there's nothing to resolve. Let's just purify that old man," the sharp, raspy voice said, "or we could just kill them," the rough voice added. Locke frowned. "Let's try my way first," he said. "People should always try to resolve issues through communication, then get on with it," a calm, cultured voice said. "Arguing with them is a waste of time." Locke nodded and looked at the adventurers, who were now on high alert. He hesitated for a moment, then raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. A faint green light flew from his hand, coalescing beside him into the form of an elderly man. The man wore a simple robe made of animal hide and vines, his hair fastened with animal bones. "If you don't recognize this gentleman, or if he's unfamiliar to you, please leave," the man said. "What follows doesn't concern you." More than one adventurer, already tense, showed signs of retreat. Mr. Locke's stature and his power was extraordinary. Luke had boasted about him extensively after their encounter, so the adventurers were well aware of his capabilities. Seeing his mysterious appearance, blocking their path, with several companions lurking in the shadows, and his unfriendly tone, several members who weren't particularly close to the group decided to leave. While some adventurers shared a bond of camaraderie and mutual support through life and death, many were merely cooperating for mutual benefit. Unless truly cornered or offered sufficient reward, adventurers were prone to desertion. "They can't just leave like that," the gentle voice said from the forest. A blue light shot out, landing on the ground in their midst, transforming into a massive ring of light that enveloped everyone. "Those unrelated to this matter may leave, but those involved please stay." More than one adventurer suddenly glowed red. Locke's gaze fell upon them, his tone turning unfriendly. "One can deceive others, but not oneself. Since you've already recognized the identity of the wraith beside me, you shouldn't dream of escaping." The captain's eyes were deep, Carefully observing the wraith accompanied by several wisps of ghost fire, he nodded and said, I know him. He was the shaman of a barbarian tribe we exterminated not long ago. That tribe kept ogre slaves. It left a deep impression on me. He turned to his companions and called out a few names. This doesn't concern you. Go back to town. If we don't meet you tomorrow, find another party. Those few hesitated not at all, leaving readily, without even inquiring about the reason. Ask less, observe more. Use your brains more than your mouths. That's how you live long, he murmured. Only after they were far away did Locke nod and say, now that the irrelevant personnel have left, let's begin our business. Regarding the case of Guten Greytree, shaman of the Greytree tribe, accusing adventurers of slaughtering his tribe, the court is now in session. Chapter 1002, a failed judgment. Over 2 months ago, a band of adventurers attacked the peaceful Greytree tribe. Every member of the tribe perished under their blades, without a single survivor, Locke said in a low voice. The tribe shaman appealed to me, requesting I uphold justice for them. I accepted his plea. Although they had a premonition, the members of the adventuring party felt a wave of tension and worry upon hearing his words. A sense of panic spread amongst them. This Mr. Locke and his companions, surely they came with malicious intent. Amidst the panic, only the captain of the adventurers remained calm. He said loudly, our military action to eliminate the Greytree tribe was carried out according to the Earl of Tarahan's colonization order, and is entirely in accordance with the laws of Tarahan territory. A blue light flickered around him, proving he wasn't lying. Locke didn't nod, but instead asked the shamanic wraith beside him. They believe their actions conform to the law and that they haven't committed any crime. What's your opinion? The wraith replied in an old, raspy voice carrying the characteristic tremor of the undead. The jungle has no such law. We are not barbarians, but citizens under the Earl of Tarahan's rule. We follow the Earl's laws and orders, the captain. We are not citizens under that Earl's rule. His orders don't extend to us, the shaman replied. Seeing that the conversation had reached an impasse, Locke shook his head and said, according to the Earl's colonization order, any adventurer is free to attack barbarians, plunder their wealth and occupy their land. If they can establish a new colony and maintain its stability, they can even receive a knighthood. However, the colonization order doesn't grant adventurers the right to kill innocent women and children. His gaze fell upon the adventuring captain, and he said in a low voice, what is your explanation for this? Before the captain could answer, the burly man who had earlier complained about hunger on the night journey bellowed, my village was attacked by barbarians. They slaughtered everyone, men, women, children. Not a single soul was spared. They could kill us, so why can't we kill them? If your entire village was killed, how are you still alive? Locke asked. At the market, the man replied, I sold my sheep, bought cloth for my mother, wine for my father, and toys for my younger siblings. But when I returned to the village, all I saw were their chopped and charred corpses. His face contorted, his eyes blazing with fury. That's when I saw an oath to their corpses. From that day on, I'd kill every barbarian I saw, 1 by 1, 2 by 2 until I died. A blue light flickered around him, proving the truth of his words. He paused, glaring fiercely at Locke. Where were you then to deliver justice? I wasn't there, so I couldn't, Locke said earnestly. But I'm here now, and I intend to bring justice. I can help you find those murderers, but first, I must bring justice to the Greytree tribe. The barbarians and we, the Tarahan people, our enemies, the adventure captain said. We're locked in endless war. Whenever we conquer each other's settlements, we slaughter the inhabitants. No prisoners, no slaves. It's our custom, our established rule. A blue light flickered around him as well. Locke turned to the shaman. Is what he says true? Yes, but our Greytree tribe has never attacked a Tarahan village. The shaman replied, we live deep within the forest and have never even encountered the Tarahans. Blue light. Locke looked back at the adventure captain. It's just that they haven't encountered the Tarahans. If they had, they would have attacked them just the same. The captain said, if they truly are peaceful and willing to attack Tarahans even if they met them, then I plead guilty. Blue light. Locke looked at the shaman and asked, if you encountered the Tarahan, would you attack them? Shaman, we are children of the forest, and resisting the Tarahan's invasion is the will of the forest. We would of course, follow the will of the forest. So, that means you would attack. That's correct, the shaman. But we've never even seen a Tarahan before encountering them. It's just that you haven't had the opportunity, the adventure captain said coldly. If you had the chance, you would attack our village as well, slaughtering our women and children. When that happens, your actions will be no different from ours. We don't stand a chance, the old shaman emphasized. Enough of this roundabout talk. Locke frowned, interrupting their increasingly circular conversation. He turned to the adventurers and asked, if you had known beforehand that they had never attacked the Tarahan, had never even encountered the Tarahan, would you still have attacked their village? One adventurer mumbled, probably. No, wait. Red light emanated from him, signifying that he was lying. Of course, the adventure captain answered without hesitation. We might not encounter the Tarahan today, but perhaps tomorrow. Even if we never do, as we continue our expansion, we will inevitably encounter them. It's better to eliminate them while they're unprepared than face a well-prepared horde of barbarians later. He spoke with conviction, without a hint of guilt, just as the blue light emanating from him was clear, bright, and done. Locke snorted coldly and asked, where does the Greytree tribe live? Deep within the forest. If you don't go deep into the forest, will you encounter them? No. Is the forest the Tarahan people's territory? Of course! For the first time, a red light appeared on the adventure captain's body. Locke sneered. It seems you yourself know that this is simply not credible. The Tarahan territory, from its naming to the present, is only a few generations, no more than 100 years. Shaman, How many years has your Grey Tree tribe lived in this forest? The shaman replied, I'm not sure, but I know the sacrificial tree in the center of the village was transplanted from afar when the village was first built. Back then, its trunk was thin enough to be encircled by a child's hands. Now, even 2 or 3 strong men together could encompass its trunk. Locke looked at the adventure captain. You are merely newcomers to this land. What right do you have to invade another's forest, seize their wealth, and murder their people? Where does this authority come from? The adventure captain pondered for a long time, then answered, we follow the Earl's decree, and the Earl's decree comes from the king's ennoblement. I believe this authority comes from the king. The blue light on his body was somewhat weak, but it had not extinguished. Locke shook his head. Are you sure the king has this authority? If the king has the power to authorize any of his nobles to invade others, then what is the point of national borders? I believe the power to invade others belongs to no one. Don't you think so? The adventure captain remained silent. The burly man roared, what good is all this talk? We've been fighting this war for years. Are we supposed to abandon our village and slink away? Locke replied. At the very least you could stop expanding. Why not? The burly man bellowed. I'm going to kill every last barbarian. Locke looked at him coldly. They are not your enemies. A true man, when angered, draws his sword against his enemies. The man who points his blade at the innocent is worthy neither of a sword nor of anger. The man raised his axe. Pretty boy, let my axe tell you if I'm a real man. With he lunged forward. Like an enraged bull, Locke watched him calmly, showing no intention of dodging. But just as the man was about to reach him, a white light flashed. Locke's sword, hanging at his hip, flew of its own accord, slicing across the man's throat, and he tumbled to the ground, axe and all, struggling fruitlessly for a few moments before falling still. Blood gushed from his throat, quickly saturating the earth beneath him, a flash of white light, and the sword returned to Locke's scabbard as if nothing had happened. Chapter 1003 The Failed Judgment. Faced with the burly man who was furiously trying to kill him, Locke didn't even formally make a move. The automatic self-defense of the magic sword simply killed him with a single stroke. The sword was unbelievably fast, causing everyone in the adventuring party to change color. Facing such a sword, even if they all attacked together, they wouldn't necessarily have a 10% chance of winning. What a fast sword, the adventuring party leader muttered. Luke was right. You're strong, stronger than we imagined. With his companion killed in a single blow, fire burned. Yet his expression became strangely calm. It seems, Mr. Locke, you've already made up your mind. I wouldn't say I've made up my mind, Locke replied. I intended to reason with him, but he chose to speak with a knife, so my sword answered him. This kind of debate was very unfavorable to him. If you also intend to forego reason and speak only with knives, then you'd better consider whether your knives can win against mine. The adventuring party leader gave a wry smile. Reason. We've already stated our reasons. The Tarahan people must expand, and if they expand, sooner or later they will clash with the Grey Tree tribe. I don't believe eliminating them beforehand constitutes a crime. A blue light flickered on his body. Locke fell silent for a moment, then said, while the saying an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure exists, I've never heard of anyone breaking into another's home and slaughtering innocent women and children as a preventative measure. If your logic holds, shouldn't the other countries bordering the kingdom unite to attack the kingdom and kill all its people? His expression darkened slightly. In the original game's storyline, the Empire invaded the kingdom, wreaking havoc wherever its armies went. The tiger, going by the name Locke, and the panda weren't on the best of terms, but he wholeheartedly supported the panda's efforts to prevent the Empire's invasion. War is the cruelest thing in the world. Anything that can prevent it is a good thing. Facing his question, the adventurer captain frowned for a long time before replying, this is different. Countries share the same language and culture, strictly speaking. We're one family, but the barbarians are of a different race entirely. Although many of them speak the common tongue, their primary language is their own. They are completely different from us. Wars between those of the same language and culture are not uncommon. To my knowledge, in the past between human nations far outnumbered those between you and the barbarians. Your reasoning is untenable. The adventure captain's brow furrowed, and he remained silent. Locke continued, I believe that regardless of the reason, aggression is wrong. Especially in your case with the Grey Tree tribe. They live deep within the forest and have no opportunity to attack you. It's highly likely that the Earl repealed the expansion order before they even came into contact with the Tarahan forces. Your so-called prevention is completely unreliable. The adventurer captain thought for a moment, then said perhaps they might join the barbarian alliance to fight for the reclamation of those already settled territories. What's wrong with reclaiming the land of our ancestors? The shaman angrily demanded. This land doesn't belong to your ancestor. Speaking. The land in this world doesn't belong to anyone. It's just that some, by virtue of being here first, and others, by virtue of their strength, claim ownership, just because you arrived earlier. Does that mean the land becomes yours? Following your logic, the gods in the heavens arrived first, so all the land in this world should belong to them. The shaman was speechless. He couldn't possibly claim his tribe predated the gods, so this talk of invasion, I think, is unfounded. Luke said, in this world, the commonly accepted methods of land ownership are either arriving first or winning a fight. The barbarians arrived first and we Tarahans won a fight. We both have grounds to claim this land. Our war is simply a clash of these two justifications. This clash happens everywhere, like a dog marking its territory on a tree. But if a tiger comes along, can the dog still say, "This is my territory"? A blue light flickered around him, mirroring the shaman's shifting expression. Locke looked at him in surprise. He hadn't expected such insight from this rough and tumble fellow, secretly marveling at him. But such arguments could only refute a limited barbarian shaman, not someone who'd crossed over from the internet age. "Your idea is interesting," he said. "So I ask you, which deity has ever issued a divine decree acknowledging ownership of any land?" "The kingdom has claimed as such," Luke said. "The gods granted us this land. The kingdom's decrees aren't divine pronouncements. You've been adventuring for many years and met many clerics. Has any cleric ever received such a divine decree?" Locke asked. Luke frowned, remaining silent. "Bursting into someone's home, slaughtering them, and seizing their wealth, in your view, is that a crime?" Luke didn't answer. Locke then turned to the shaman and asked, "Has anyone in your tribe ever attacked the Tarahan people?" "No." "Have you made preparations to set out on an expedition to attack the Tarahan people?" "No." "Have you cursed the Tarahan people, praying for their swift demise?" "No." The three emphatic denials were unwavering, and the blue light emanating from the shaman remained steady, without the slightest flicker. Locke nodded and looked at the adventurers. "See, they never posed any threat to you. They never even intended to threaten you, yet you fabricated charges and murdered them, sparing neither the old nor the young. Now, don't you think you owe them justice? Killing barbarians isn't a problem, is it?" "Yeah. How is that owing them justice? Is there a difference between barbarians, goblins, and ogres? They even raised ogres," the adventurers responded in a cacophony of voices, each body shimmering with a blue light, a testament to their sincerity. Watching the blue light emanating from them, Locke's expression grew darker. "Mr. Locke," the adventure captain said with a slight smile, his demeanor calm and self-assured, "I admit your point is well taken, but I don't believe killing barbarians constitutes a crime. My teammates don't think so either, and I imagine most Tarahans feel the same." The blue light around him was as calm as his expression. "I told you this wouldn't work!" A raspy voice, like the grinding of metal, echoed from the forest. "There's no such thing as justice in this world. Cutting them down is the only justice!" "Oh yeah, the word reason. One horizontal stroke, one vertical. Only those who can stand firm have the right to say they're reasonable. All this chattering gets you nowhere." Locke shook his head repeatedly, sighing deeply, still refusing to give up. The gentle voice also spoke. "The end of the road is the horizon. The end of words is the sword. You've already stated your reasons. They can't argue with you, but they see themselves as wrong. What's left to negotiate with such people? Negotiation fails, only battle remains." Locke sighed long and hard, then looked at the adventurers. "Perhaps my companions are right. But I want to ask you some final questions," he said. "Would you want the Greytree tribe's fate to befall your own families, if one day, complete strangers, bearing the king's banner, stormed into your homes, slaughtering your women, children and the elderly? Would you excuse them simply because they didn't consider you human?" "Never," the adventurers roared. "Then why do you inflict such things on others?" Locke's expression was a mixture of anger and pain. "Do you truly refuse reason?" One adventurer sneered. "Reason? The blazer reason is the blay," Locke roared. "Is that all you understand?" He could bear it no longer. He snatched his cloak, flung it aside, and a flash of light erupted from his hand as the magic sword. "Swift Knight was fine. Since that's the only reason you understand, I'll use that reason to speak to you." He glared at the adventurers, his murderous aura chilling the air around them, one or all at once. "You choose?" Blood soaked the ground. Despite their crushing defeat at Locke's hand, the adventurers remained unwilling to truly admit fault. Faced with the old shaman's burning rage and the stark choice presented, Locke ultimately chose to avenge the Greytree tribe. The only thing he could do for those adventurers was to give their families a sum of money in the name of compensation, price for their lives. Why? Why hadn't they shown even a flicker of remorse? Why did they lack even a shred of apology? The tiger slumped in the blood, muttering to himself. Even now, cornered and defeated, they could admit their mistakes. Why? A person can't deceive their own heart. Wu Men walked over and said, "For them, killing barbarians is blame. That won't change just because you're right, or because you're stronger than them." They had clearly admitted defeat in the argument. "Enough whining! Let's go!" Horus brandished his battle-axe like a flag, urging them onward. "It's just killing a few people. I say, killing 10 or 8 more wouldn't be a big deal. Killing doesn't solve problems," the tiger insisted. "Even if they've committed crimes, as long as they sincerely repent and strive to do good afterward. We should still give them a chance. What if they commit crimes again afterward? There's a lie detector formation!" "People's hearts are easily changed." "Not that easily. You know people's hearts aren't so easily changed. So how can you imagine a group of murderers who slaughtered a village and still wear smiles on their faces would sincerely admit their mistakes?" Umin sighed. "Forget it. Don't be so hung up on it. Just think of it as a quest in a game. Relax a little." "No. This world isn't a game." Lao shook his head again. "If this situation arises, there must be something wrong. Everyone could have lived peacefully, yet they had to fight to the death. This isn't right." "Then what do you intend to do?" Min asked. "And end this erroneous expansion war. That won't be easy." Mumine said. "You need immense power. Enough power to make both sides respect your opinion." "I'll try my best." Lao nodded, clenching his fists. Chapter Learn Like the Wind. Part 1. Don't ask me where I come from. My homeland lies far away. A handsome minstrel played his lute, its melodious song echoing through the small tavern. Hearing the music, everyone in the tavern closed their eyes, silently enjoying it. Even passers-by stopped in their tracks, listening intently to the beautiful melody. Isabella, hurrying her flock back to the village as the sun set, saw this peaceful scene. Startled, she thought something must have happened in the village. She hastily shook a villager who stood motionless, earning a rebuke. "Little Isabella," the man said, "you'll shake the neck right off me." Isabella blushed, stopping her shaking. "What's going on? Why are you all standing here?" "We're listening to the music." The man chuckled. "A minstrel's cancer, and his singing is wonderful. Go take a look, it's a feast for the eyes, at least." Isabella blushed again but didn't go to the tavern immediately. First, she herded her sheep home, one by one into the pen, carefully checking the enclosure to ensure none would escape. Before hurrying to the tavern, evening had fallen and the tavern buzzed with conversation. As she entered, she saw a man in a white linen robe, handsome beyond imagination, talking to the village elder. In this village, the elder was undoubtedly a bigwig. He handled communication between the village and the lord, matters of conscription, taxation, and the various part-time jobs the villagers performed. He was the liaison to the lord's castle. He held considerable power, almost equivalent to the lord himself, within the village. Isabella was usually somewhat intimidated by the village elder, not only but also because his son Dak had his eye on her and frequently sought her out for conversation and amusement. Dak wasn't a bad person, really. He was tall, strong, and skilled with a bow and arrow. The most outstanding young man in the village, but Isabella always felt that simply accepting his advances and marrying him would be, well, rather uninteresting. Because she refused Dak's advances, she was afraid of seeing the village elder, but at that moment, she completely ignored the elder. Her gaze was captivated by that man. At first glance he seemed quite young, perhaps 17 or 18, but upon closer inspection, he appeared to be in his 20s, exuding a mature aura. His smile was not the pretentious smirk of a callow youth, nor the calculating mask of an old man, nor the vacant grin of a simpleton, but a warm, gentle smile filled with strength, yet utterly devoid of intimidation or unpleasantness drawn in by his smile. Isabella unconsciously approached the table, asking in a soft voice she never would have used before, "Sir, are you a minstrel?" The handsome man smiled and nodded, picking up a strangely shaped lute from the floor and casually strumming it. The lute's melody tinkled and flowed like a stream cascading from a high mountain, flowing directly into her heart. After playing for a while, the minstrel began to sing. His voice held a captivating vibrato, the notes danced on his tongue on the strings. And most of all, in Isabella's heart, the entire tavern fell silent once more, only the melodious lute and resonant voice filling the space. After a while the song ended. The minstrel rose and bowed, and the pace, snapping out of an applause. Isabella, of course, was clapping too, and with the loudest applause of all. Amidst the applause, the minstrel smiled and extended his hand to her. Only then did Isabella realize, engaging a minstrel cost money, and considering how beautiful the minstrel's music and singing were, hiring him for a song would likely be very expensive, wouldn't it? She reached for her pocket, but found only a few copper coins. Her face instantly flushed crimson. Feeling as if it were on fire, the minstrel laughed and took a copper coin from her hand. "This coin," he said, "is for my old companion." With that, he gently plucked a string on his lute, introducing his companion to the audience. Then he added, "As for me, beautiful maiden, your smile is the best payment I could ask for." The fire left Isabella's face and ignited in her heart. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly remembered that she had been tending sheep all day, and had just carried a lamb into the pen. Her hands were covered in dust and wool, and she had actually offered such hands to the minstrel. Oh my! Her face flushed crimson again, and she darted out. What's wrong with her? The bard wondered. That's just how young girls are, the village elder chuckled. Their minds are like birds, one moment on the ground, the next in the trees, then off flying again. You never quite know what they're thinking. The bard smiled and tilted his head. You're right. Young girls are as lively and lovely as birds. With that, he strummed his lute, this song for the birds. Isabella raced to the village well, faster even than last year when Shed encountered the wolf. Then, Shed been wielding a club now. She was in a hurry to wash her hands. In a flash, the shepherdess drew up a bucket of water. She was about to plunge her hand in, then stopped. Just now, the bard had touched this hand when he took the copper coin. She hesitated, carefully considering whether washing her hands was truly necessary. Just then, the singing drifted to her again from afar. Standing by the well, she listened to the melodious song, a blissful smile gracing her lips. After a moment the song ended. She nodded, set down her bucket, and returned home to fetch a pail. To wash only one hand? No! She would wash herself from head to toe, clean and beautiful, before going to hear the minstrel sing again. The autumn air was somewhat cool, and the well water sent a shiver down her spine, but Isabella felt no chill. On the contrary, as she bathed, thinking of the minstrel's smile, she found the water almost warm. Perhaps the warmth wasn't from the water, from her heart washing. Changing clothes, arranging her hair, Isabella spent a long time making herself beautiful. She usually only took such pains on village festival days. Then she arrived at the tavern door. The tavern's patrons had all gone home. It was now round. Only the minstrel remaining in a corner. Bread, wine and broth sat before him. He ate leisurely, his movements imbued with a graceful rhythm, as if he were himself an instrument eternally playing. Isabella took a deep breath and approached him. She said, her voice trembled slightly at first, but quickly steadied. "My name is Isabella." "Isabella? What a lovely name." The minstrel smiled, his presence seeming to shimmer with moonlight. "I am Nephilim, a man who wanders like the wind." Chapter 1005 The Man Like the Wind. Las Vidalias, a place where everyone knows everyone. No, not like that. Pay attention to the trill. Your tongue needs to curl up. What language is this? It's so difficult to learn. If you want to learn the authentic Katyusha, of course it's going to be difficult. I can translate it into common tongue, but it won't sound as beautiful. Isabella sighed and continued to struggle with the difficult notes, though she sighed. A smile played on her lips. Her beautiful large were half closed, the corners of her mouth slightly upturned even in silence, betraying her excellent mood to all who saw her. Dak, the village chief's son, the strongest young man in the village, sitting on the hillside beside the wandering minstrel, learning that strange song. He clenched his fists. He's furious! Furious enough to want to hit someone! That pretty boy! That effeminate, singing pretty boy. He looked at Isabella's smiling face. How beautiful it was! Such a smile was only seen at the festival celebrations. He looked at Isabella's clothes, her favorite, beautiful dress, which she usually treasured and only wore on holidays. Anyone who dared to touch it would face her displeasure. Yet now, she sat on the ground completely unconcerned about her attire. He looked at Isabella's hand. Isabella's hand! She was actually holding the pretty boy's hand! And placing her hand on the pretty boy's throat. Heavens! What was that pretty boy trying to do? Was he trying to touch Isabella's neck with his filthy hands? Unforgivable. Dak looked around, found the thickest stick, picked it up. Pretty boy! Take your filthy hands off her! He shouted from a distance. Or he'll break them! Nibelin blinked, turning to look at him, then down at his own hands. Not dirty, he murmured to himself. I washed them only an hour ago, but, he glanced around, seemingly realizing that sitting on the ground was indeed a bit unclean. He smiled, snapping his fingers. Magical light rose from his hand, enveloping a large area around them when the light faded. But Isabella was clean as well, and even the few sheep bathed in the glow had wool as white as snow, without a speck of dust. All right, perfectly clean now, he chuckled, turning to Dak. Thanks for pointing it out. Having said that, he placed the hand he'd just used for magic on Isabella's throat, his other hand grasping hers and placing it on his own throat. Come, pay attention to the vibrations in my throat as I sing. You need to learn to do the same. Isabella, hand held in his, went limp, feeling the warmth of his hand on her neck. Her heart softened as well. What Dak had said, what he had done, was completely forgotten. Even Dak himself, standing not far away, had been utterly dismissed from her mind. Dak stood, wanting to step forward, but his legs felt weak and refused to move. He wanted to retreat, but couldn't bring himself to do so. He could only watch, his body trembling, whether from anger or fear. He couldn't tell. After an indeterminate amount of time, summoning all his courage and taking a step forward, Nibelin noticed this from the corner of his eye, and smiled with a touch of surprise. What a fool, but unexpectedly courageous, he thought. The effeminate minstrel, whom many considered weak and helpless, raised his hand, seemingly casually, and brushed the weeds beside him. With a single sweep of his hand, at least 5 or 6 weeds snapped in the middle, their lower halves swaying gently in the mountain breeze, while the upper halves were blown away by the wind, floating further and further. Dak's face turned ashen, his hard-won courage seemingly swept away by the wind as well. He dejectedly turned around and walked away, his spirit crushed like a defeated rooster. Isabella hadn't even noticed Dak's departure. She was still following Nephilim's instructions, trying to learn that strange dialect with its many trilled consonants, but she couldn't master it. Forget it. Learn something simpler. Nephilim finally continued. The olive tree. Isabella sighed, frustrated by her own stupidity, yet couldn't help but smile. She still remembered the lyrics to that song. Don't ask me where I come from. My hometown lies far away. Only someone who has wandered far and wide and gained deep understanding could write a song like this. Perhaps he always yearned for home, but his ambitions kept him from returning. What was he pursuing? And who was this olive tree? This lovely girl from some distant place. Suddenly, she trembled slightly. Could it be? Could the olive tree be referring to her? She knew the thought was absurd, yet she couldn't help but entertain it. The idea burned within her, a searing fire that flushed her cheeks and reddened her neck. Watching Isabella's fluctuating emotions, worry, laughter, then blushing, Nibelin couldn't help but smile. What a fascinating girl. Her beauty was secondary, it was her playful personality that truly captivated him. His extended stay in this little village had been well worth it. Just then, he turned abruptly, his brow furrowed in surprise as he looked towards the village at the foot of the mountain. From within the village, the glint of swords reflected the sunlight. Immediately afterward, screams pierced the air. He stood, a grave expression settling in his eyes, had sufficient confidence in his abilities, but even with his considerable power, he couldn't protect everyone in the midst of a chaotic battle. He found the village agree with the other villagers, even that goofy rival, Dak. Even he was a decent lad, at least courageous. If possible, he wanted to protect this village. That wouldn't be easy. Stay behind me, he said sternly to Isabella. Be careful, and don't stray from my side. With that, he led Isabella down the mountain. His loot was stowed away, a slender sword, forged by a goblin master craftsman and enchanted by a master from the capital, was discreetly hidden in his wide sleeves, ready to be drawn. They soon reached the foot of the mountain and entered the village. Bandits had just arrived. They'd killed the guards who tried to stop them and were demanding food, money, and the village's most beautiful girl be delivered to their mountain stronghold by noon the day after tomorrow. The village chief, having finished his trembling account, continued to shake uncontrollably. A bandit's blade had narrowly missed him moments before. Hearing the bandits' demands, the villagers turned their gaze toward Isabella. Food and money were readily available, but the request for the village's most beautiful girl presented a significant difficulty. Isabella read the apology in their eye, her face instantly paling. At that moment she heard a voice from behind. The voice was soft yet powerful, straightening her spine as she had been about to collapse. "Don't worry, I'm here." Chapter 1006 The Man Like the Wind, Part 2. Watch at sunset. Isabella sat on the hillside, lost in thought. She had been sitting there for the entire afternoon, with Nibelung keeping her company. The village headman had already set off for the Lord's castle, hoping to persuade the Lord to send troops to eliminate the bandits, but a round trip from here to the castle, however fast, would take at least 2 or 3 days, assuming the Lord was willing to send troops, according to an old man in the village. As long as it only involved grain, then a woman, the Lord might not be willing to send troops for such a small loss. After all, attacking a bandit stronghold deep in the mountains was no easy task. Even if things went smoothly, several men would still likely die, making it seem unprofitable no matter how you looked at it. The old man who said this naturally received a barrage of eye rolls, yet no one could deny the logic in his words. A village girl versus several soldiers. The answer was obvious. Dax suggested that Nibelung was a skilled warrior, and that if he were asked to protect the village, the bandits would be unwilling to risk the lives of several men for a small gain by fighting him. However, this suggestion was also rejected by the villagers. No matter how strong Nibelung was, he was only one man. Facing a horde of bandits, he couldn't be everywhere at once. Just 7 or 8 spears would be enough to render him helpless. Not to mention the bandits likely had bows and arrows. How could he possibly dodge arrows fired from ambush during a fight? Asking him to protect the village would be tantamount to sending him to his death, and might even enrage the bandits further. Nibelung was a good man and his death was a pity. Provoking the bandits, however, wasn't just a pity, it was disastrous. The villagers wanted neither pity nor disaster, so they had only one choice: to hand over Isabella. After all, she was just a little girl. Isabella's parents, of course, were unwilling, but they were only 2 people against nearly 200 villagers. How could 2 people contend with 200? Even if most people weren't so brazen, if only 1 in 10, or even 20 people spoke up together, they could overwhelm the parents with their words, leaving them speechless. In the end, some even thought that handing Isabella over to the bandits wasn't so bad. Perhaps it would even be an opportunity to establish a relationship with them. Listening to them, Isabella grew increasingly irritated and finally ran away, going to the hillside to tend her sheep. Nibelung silently followed her, saying nothing, as she spoke to herself under the setting sun. The handsome minstrel finally spoke. "If it is your wish, I can fight the bandits for you," he said. Isabella first laughed, but immediately shook her head. "No, they're right. You can't fight off that many bandits alone." Nibelung shook his head, saying nothing. After a while, he said, "Let's continue with your singing lessons." Isabella nodded and continued learning with him. As the sun set, instead of herding the sheep home as usual, she hugged Nibelung. "Take me away, please," she whispered. "Let's leave Domrey. Go somewhere where no one can find us." Nibelung paused, then asked, "What about your family?" "I don't know," Isabella thought. What would happen to her family if she wasn't there when the bandits came? What about the villagers? Her heart was in turmoil. She didn't know. Her arms around Nibelung tightened. At least tonight. "Could you stay at my house?" Her voice grew fainter, her face flushed crimson, her heart pounding like a drum. Nibelung paused, then reached out and embraced her. "Very well, if that is your wish, your neighbor. I actually found a bandit stronghold in the eastern border of the Serra's kingdom. This stronghold looks pretty historical. I bet there's good stuff inside." "Horus, where exactly, Nits?" "Pandaring any unforeseen circumstances, we should be able to meet tomorrow, your neighbor." "Mr. Xuanhuan, what a coincidence!" "The stronghold I found is nearby." From Pazella, heading north, there's a small village called Domami. I saw the stronghold on the mountain north of the village. "Horus, whoa, that close? I'm setting off right now." "Where you coming?" "Panda, what a coincidence indeed." "Alright, I'm leaving too. Give me the coordinates, I'll be there soon." Nibelung quietly rose, the thin blanket slipping from his movement. The moonlight streaming through the window couldn't quite conceal Isabella's beautiful form. She was beautiful and lovely. Nephilim smiled. The linen robe lying on the floor beside the bed vanished, reappearing on him in an instant. He looked out the window. The moonlight was beautiful. Such a beautiful night wasted on murder and arson. It felt a shame. But people were the most beautiful sight of all. He thought this and with a flicker vanished. After a long time, Isabella woke. Opening her eyes, she didn't see Nephilim, and a sudden panic seized her. A few minutes later, she was dressed, searching the house and grounds, but Nephilim was nowhere to be found. Her parents sat dazed by the doorway. Seeing her run out in distress, they rushed to ask what was wrong. Upon hearing her story, the old couple didn't panic, but exchanged a silent look. It was clear that Nibelung couldn't fight off a whole band of bandits, and he didn't want to see Isabella given to them. So he could only slip away quietly. "Don't look for him," Mother consoled Isabella. "He's gone. It's better this. Would you want him to watch you being given to the bandits?" Isabella, who had been searching everywhere, was struck dumb, as if thunderstruck. Only after a long while did she regain her senses. "You're right," she said slowly, sitting down on the ground. As she spoke, her tears began to flow. The family wept together, utterly helpless. As dawn approached, the villagers came to their house. The food and money offered to the bandits were already prepared. They were ready to go up into the mountains. The bandits' lair was deep in the mountains, a considerable distance away. If they left late, they would arrive before noon. They called for Isabella to leave, and she didn't resist. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she seemed dazed and vacant, lost in a daze, walking woodenly with the group towards the mountains as the sun rose. The mountain path was treacherous. Several times she nearly stumbled. Once she almost tumbled over the cliff edge. If it hadn't been for a sudden gust of wind, she would have plunged into the ravine below, a mangled mess. The villagers surrounded her, keeping a close watch. If anything happened to her, it would be a relief for her, but the villagers would be the ones to suffer. Finally, they reached the mountain stronghold, but instead of bandits, they found two adventurers, who had eradicated the bandits and were now roasting meat in the courtyard. The two adventurers were fearsome in appearance and imposing in demeanor. They had slain dozens of bandits, their corpses piled high in a gruesome heap. The sight left the villagers terrified and distraught. Some even wet themselves. Isabella, however, wasn't particularly afraid. She was simply relieved. In her relief, she thought of Nephilim again. He would be so happy, wouldn't he? She heard the sound of a lute and singing. Don't ask me where I come from. My home is far away. She turned her head in surprise, but found that everyone else seemed oblivious to the singing. Could it be that only she could hear it? Just then, she noticed the adventurer with the black-white bare head looking thoughtfully in the direction of the singing, then glancing at her with a knowing smile. In that instant, Isabella understood. These two adventurers clearly knew Nephilim. Perhaps they were his friends, invited to help the village solve its troubles. She remembered the bloody footprints in the mountain bandits' courtyard. Some were barefooted. Nephilim never wore shoes, yet his feet were always clean, without a speck of dust. Finally, she smiled, as beautiful as mountain flowers blooming in the sunlight. Chapter 7 Fish and Dragons Ascend. In the northwest of the western continent, there are many sprawling mountains, which act as a natural barrier separating the countries of Sears and Leighton. The lands bordering this mountain range belong to the renowned Henry family, a powerful and ancient noble house of Thrace, tracing its lineage back to before the kingdom's founding. They were veteran dignitaries who had fought alongside the Duke of Thrace in the nation's creation. The Marquis of Henry's territory was vast and exceptionally fertile. Water from the northern mountains nourished the land, ensuring consistently bountiful harvests. It was considered one of Thrace's most productive regions, earning the moniker Northwest Granary. Naturally, such a place possessed numerous underground watercourses, ranging in size from slow seeps to powerful subterranean rivers. These interacted with the surface waterways, forming the complex hydrological system of the Northwest Granary. At this moment, in a subterranean stream not far from the Marquis' castle, a time traveler with two peculiar whiskers on his chin lay luxuriously in the flowing water, gazing upwards. The thick layer of earth, normally an obstruction to vision, was as if non-existent to him. The flowing water couldn't shift his position in the slightest. He remained fixed in place like an anchored ship. According to the information he'd gathered en route, Edward Henry frequently passed along the road above these days, inspecting his estates. The man, his brother, had only been dead a few days, and already he was acting like the heir apparent. Didn't he care if his ghostly father was displeased? Liu Daoqing snorted coldly, opening the chat channel to find the time travelers in a chaotic uproar, discussing the hunt for the Marquis of Henry. The Marquis of Henry was truly something else. His escape had been decisive and without hesitation. He was also incredibly skilled in battle, having already killed nearly 30 people. It was fortunate he hadn't remained to fight, otherwise he might well have been among the casualties. He sighed, muttering to himself, such a pity! If only he'd learned to behave himself, and not indulged in such slaughter, we could have been friends. Oh, but friendship was impossible now. Had killed his son. Thinking this, he couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Damn it, that guy Jakal is such a freaking unlucky bastard! I just collapsed a few mountains, and so many people weren't crushed. Why the hell did he have to be the one to die? And he was supposed to be a legendary strongman in the future. What a pathetic weakling. After complaining, he shook his head, dismissing the past events and focusing on his surroundings. The sun gradually rose, and more pedestrians appeared on the road. After a while, accompanied by the rapid sound of hooves, a well-equipped troop of cavalry sped past, driving the pedestrians to the sides to make way for the carriage following behind, their demeanor extremely arrogant. Liu Daoqing narrowed his eyes, carefully observing the carriage. On the carriage's base, he saw reinforcing magic arrays and thick metal plates. Undoubtedly, this carriage looked like an ordinary vehicle, but if attacked it could instantly transform into a solid mobile fortress. He at least had no ability to break it open and drag the occupants out to kill them. Damn it, Edward is so cautious! He cursed angrily, melting into the stream and quickly disappearing. Over an hour later, a new guest with a strange long beard appeared in the Twin Cities tavern nearby. This guest was slightly hunched, disheveled, and appeared somewhat down on his luck, yet he wore expensive silk clothing, leaving the bartender uncertain of his identity. This guest was taciturn. After ordering food and drinks, he sat in a corner eating silently, clearly unwilling to interact with others. Fortunately, he spoke clearly and was indeed wealthy, readily paying with several gold coins. Putting the worried bartender at ease, Liu Daoqing ate silently, showing no intention of talking to the nearby diners. He was actually a shy person. Only in front of close friends would he become a chatterbox, while in front of strangers, he was as silent as a clam, capable of sitting quietly for hours, his mouth moving only to eat and drink. Mysteriously transported to the world of the game New World, he felt constantly uneasy. Whenever he found himself in unfamiliar surroundings, He always adhered to the principle of silence being golden even with his strength. Even if he were to be excessively verbose, no one would dare to express displeasure. Lu Doqing was a homebody. For a long time, he had been engaged in agriculture in the Xuanhuan territory, mainly researching the techniques of artificial mushroom cultivation. Aside from that, he spent his free time tinkering with artificial cola. He didn't have many other culinary preferences, he simply loved drinking cola. The lack of cola after his transmigration made him quite unhappy. To solve this problem, he had been searching for suitable ingredients. On Earth, making homemade cola was simple: mix brown sugar water with baking soda, shake well, seal, and refrigerate, resulting in a simple sweet carbonated beverage. To achieve the unique flavor of cola, one only needed to add a few more seasonings. With access to the almighty Taobao, anything could be easily purchased, even cola syrup directly. Simply add the appropriate amount of water, and you'd have a basically acceptable cola drink. But it wasn't the same in this world. At least not in the Western continent, because the Western continent didn't have brown sugar. Brown sugar is made from sugarcane juice, by slowly simmering sugarcane juice in a low-temperature pot to evaporate the water. One obtains this nutritious sweet condiment. However, the Western continent doesn't produce sugarcane, nor does it have sugar beets. If the people here wanted sweets, apart from the rare and slow-growing sweet trees similar to the famous sugar maples of Canada on Earth, they could only rely on honey. The Xuanhuan territory, where the transmigrators mainly resided, didn't have sweet trees. The only source of sugar here was honey. Lu Doqing had tried making cola with honey. The taste wasn't bad, but the cost was too high and the yield too low, completely unable to satisfy his needs. So he continued searching for other methods. He first looked for sap. Since this world had sugar maples, there should be other trees or vines that produced sugar. During his first winter after transmigration, he led a group of people searching for a long time in the Miseril forest, collecting saps of various colors: red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, and violet. But apart from poisoning everyone, they gained nothing. But Lu Doqing didn't give up, he kept trying. Ultimately, he chose to make malt sugar. Malt can also be used to make sugar. The key is to utilize the enzymes produced by germinating wheat to hydrolyze starch and obtain sugar. While the technique sounds simple, it's quite challenging in practice, mainly due to temperature control. Lu Doqing spent nearly a year, experimenting dozens of times before finally mastering the key to making malt sugar and achieving stable production. The raw material for malt sugar is grain, resulting in a high yield, with sufficient sugar. All that remained was for the druids to find suitable herbs to blend the memory of the cola flavor. Mr. Jean, the druid from the Misteril forest, was very interested in this. Besides studying medicine, he spent his spare time helping Lu Doqing blend spices, striving to create the cola he had boasted about for so long. With the sugar secured and the spices proving unhelpful, and the artificial mushroom cultivation finally completed, Lu Doqing, restless after a period of inactivity, went out looking for something to do. This search led him to the north of Ceres. Chapter 008: Whispers from the Fish and Dragon. The story of the feud between Lu Doqing and the Marquis Henry is a long one, or not so long, depending on how you look at it. It can be summarized in two sentences. The Marquis Henry led the Ceres army to invade Moray. Lu Doqing, on humanitarian grounds, helped the Moray people resist the invasion, triggering a landslide that attacked the Ceres army, crushing Marquis Henry's eldest son Jackal to death. The second Marquis Henry, enraged, conducted a massacre in the occupied territories in retaliation. Equally enraged, Lu Doqing decided to go the Henry family's territory and kill the old butcher's entire family, sending a stern warning to the Ceres nobility. Yes, a bit long, but still technically two sentences. The Marquis Henry is dead, quite recently, and the travelers are transporting his body to the Thrace military camp. They should arrive around the time Lu Doqing finishes his meal. The Thrace side will likely receive news shortly after, within a few hours at most. Edward Henry will learn of his father's demise, and then he will be the current Marquis Henry, the head of the Henry family. Congratulations, congratulations. The only problem is, Lu Doqing doesn't intend to let this fellow peacefully assume his position as head of the family. Marquis Henry orchestrated a massacre in the Norma region, resulting in countless deaths. Now that he's dead, it's all over for him. But this blood debt cannot be so easily settled. This is an Earth, there's no one person does it. One person takes responsibility rule here. Collective punishment and the principle of filial piety extend to the entire family. These are commonplace. Lu Doqing doesn't entirely agree with these practices, but if he wants to create a deterrent, he must play by these rules. As the panda had said before, the simplest and most effective way to prevent the enemy from resorting to terror is to counter evil terror with righteous terror. To make those villains understand that they're facing not a righteous gentleman who values reason and humanity, but a ruthless and merciless butcher. The nobles of this world generally don't care about the lives of commoners. In a battle, the death of soldiers might cause some regret, but only regret to truly make them tremble in fear and never cross the line again. The butcher's knife must fall upon them. Lu Doqing ate his meal in silence, recalling his conversation with the panda and carefully considering his next plan. Before, Edward, as the heir of the Henry family, already had numerous guards and traveled in a carriage that was practically an iron fortress. Now that he's the head of the family, he controls more resources and will undoubtedly have even stronger security. If I don't succeed on the first attempt, there won't be a second chance. Furthermore, if I were to target other members of the Henry family first, alerting them, it would likely make Edward worry and ruin my chance to assassinate him. Lu Doqing ate his meal carefully considering his options for a long time before finally making up his mind. He would kill Edward. The other members of the Henry family didn't matter much. The family had been around for centuries, with a vast number of descendants. It was unrealistic for him to wipe them out single-handedly. Since extermination was impossible, eliminating Edward would be sufficiently intimidating. According to the information from the two-leg bookshelf and yin, only Edward remained of the Marquis Henry's children. There were no other siblings. Killing him would make it a complete family matter, he muttered to himself, a smile playing on his lips. With that decided, all that remained was finding the opportunity. Ludoking nodded, his thoughts clarified. He then went to the counter and ordered 200 baked cakes, 2 buckets of sweet wine, and 4 roasted pig legs. The innkeeper was startled and asked if he wanted them immediately. Ludoking replied that he could wait but not for too long, then paid a deposit and left. About 2 hours later he returned to the inn. Gemini City's security was abysmal. In just 2 hours, he'd encountered 2 groups of con artists, 4 thieves, and a band of robbers, all of whom had generously contributed to his experience points and monetary gains. For instance, the money he was currently using to pay the remaining balance was a gift from these individuals. As for their fate, those who expressed fear at the mention of the city guard were indeed delivered to the guard. Those who showed no fear of such threats had their necks unceremoniously twisted. Those who respect the law should be judged by the law. Those who show no respect for the law are either desperate criminals or have powerful connections. It was simpler to just turn them into experience points. Under the watchful, apprehensive gaze of the waiter, Ludoking stowed his food in his inventory and left the restaurant. Dozens of people were waiting outside, glaring at him menacingly. Their origins were diverse, and he wasn't sure if they belonged to theft rings, robbery gangs, or perhaps forces behind these groups, or even the city's official power structure. It didn't matter. The smiling traveler stamped his foot, and he and his clothes dissolved into water, seeping into the ground and vanishing without a trace. To try and ambush a monster Taoist door. How incredibly Nava! Strolling leisurely through the underground water channels, Ludoking had dropped his disguise, a smile causing the 2 strange, long whiskers on his chin to twitch merrily. Inhabiting his own game character, a monster from the eastern lands, a fish dragon. His profession a Taoist priest of the Taiping Dao. Eastern cultivators also had various schools of thought, with several major branches within the Guangdaoist tradition alone. The Taiping Dao was one such renowned school, characterized by 2 key features: minimal rules and simple techniques. As an organization openly proclaiming heaven is dead, the yellow heaven shall reign, explicitly declaring their intention to rebel, the Taiping Dao was practically unrestrained. Drinking, eating meat, murder, arson, marriage, childbirth, nothing was a problem. This drove those Eastern cultivators bound by strict codes green with envy, giving rise to derogatory terms like demon Taoist, false Taoist, and fallen monk. But the Taiping Dao's demon Taoists simply shrugged it off. Taiping Dao magic was remarkably simple, essentially consisting of 4 techniques: summoning illusions, invoking natural disasters, talismanic water healing, and talisman ingestion. These techniques largely originated from various versions of Three Kingdoms story. Compared to other Taoist schools, the number was admittedly small, but wielded effectively, these 4 spells were more than sufficient. 1 trick can conquer the world, let alone 4, for instance. At this moment, Lu Yoda was preparing his spells, diligently working within an underground aquifer not far from the castle. He was unsure when Edward Henry would emerge, but he was certain the man would venture out frequently. As long as he prepared thoroughly and waited patiently, he would surely find an opportunity when Edward wasn't using his iron carriage. And then, it would be the end for this new Lord Henry. Chapter 1009, The Fish and Dragon Lineage. Ludoking waited for 4 or 5 days. Edward Henry, for reasons unknown, insisted on traveling to and from the castle by carriage. He also brought a large retinue of guards, making him look less like a marquis and more like a Xuanhuan who'd been assassinated several times and thoroughly spooked. It wasn't until Ludoking was nearly out of his stored food supplies, contemplating a resupply run, that his opportunity finally arrived. That night, the newly appointed Marquis Henry, clad in hunting attire, rode out of the castle surrounded by guards. Several carriages accompanied him. Their decorations suggested a bevy of beautiful women were inside. Hey, was the fellow planning a romantic rendezvous in the wilderness? Ludoking mused, then chuckled. He probably felt the direct line of his family was thinning and needed more offspring, he thought. Too late, the usually jovial Yulong Taoist smile vanished, replaced by a chilling, contorted grin. Edward Henry instantly sensed something was amiss. He looked around but saw no immediate danger. From the castle location it was impossible for someone to shoot him from afar without being detected. Yet, his warning device blared with extreme intensity. After a moment's thought, the Marquis, who'd only recently inherited his title, decided to return, but before the cries of battle erupted from all sides, a sudden, thick fog enveloped the surroundings, turning the world into a blinding white. Hundreds of soldiers materialized from the mist, encircling him from all directions. Edward immediately activated his teleportation device, only to find the space locked, rendering the teleportation useless. Without a second thought, "Protect me!" and drew his sword, preparing for battle. His guards quickly gathered around him, even pushing the carriages forward to create a makeshift barrier. But against the surging tide of soldiers, it was largely ineffective. What was most unsettling was that these soldiers were blurry-faced and indistinct of form, appearing as mere phantoms. Sometimes, the guards would clearly strike them with their swords, only for the blade to pass right through, seemingly without effect. However, when they attacked, their blows landed with brutal, undeniable force. The guards were no match for such foes. The mage's spells proved effective, but with so many enemies, the two accompanying Edward were clearly insufficient. The two mages exchanged a glance. The older one said, "These are likely magical creatures inhabiting the mist. Let's try dispelling the fog with a spell." With that they began to chant. Their magical power coalesced, quickly manifesting as a powerful wind. As they had predicted, as the mist dissipated, the shadowy, indistinct soldiers faded and vanished. Edward finally breathed a sigh of relief, but then felt the ground tremble. An earthquake. "Impossible," he exclaimed, but instead of running towards the castle, he ran towards the nearest open space. No matter how strong, a castle was less safe than open ground during an earthquake. Inside the castle, a large number of guards rushed out to protect him. Once they reunited, he would be safe. But he had only run a few steps when the ground shook violently again, the earth cracked open, and a colossal monster with a bluish-white body burst forth. The creature was at least 10 meters long, with a bluish-white, streamlined body, lacked limbs, resembling a fish at first glance. But its head was utterly unlike any fish. Fierce and ferocious, it was covered in thick plates, and possessed a large mouth filled with sharp teeth. A terrifying monster. Most striking were the two long tendrils hanging from its lower jaw, crackling with electricity, dazzling even in broad daylight. It lunged from Edward's feet, its body not yet fully emerged from the ground, its jaws gaping open as it savagely lunged Edward. Crack! The guards' attacks rained down upon it, a fountain of blood erupting as it was battered and bruised, bones showing through the ravaged flesh. Yet, this did not stop it from completely severing the Marquis' upper body and swallowing it whole. Then, it spat out a stone tablet, before plunging back into the earth, vanishing without a trace. The entire process took no more than 5 seconds. The guards arrived in a fluster, only to find the Marquis' torso and the blood-soaked stone tablet. 2 lines of inscription were etched upon the tablet: "The killer shall be killed, the butcher shall pay the price." Gazing at the tablet, they exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of what to do. Could this monster have been someone's pet? Did it attack the Marquis to avenge the massacres in the Norma region perpetrated by his predecessors? There were many theories, but none of that mattered to Lu Daoqing anymore. Following the underground waterway, pushing his injured body to its limits for over 100 miles before finally finding an extremely deep underground lake, he hid in the lake, disgorged the undigested upper half of Edward Henry, stored it in his inventory, and then used a self-destruct to return to town. Half an hour later, the lively and bouncing fish dragon Taoist was sitting in the dining hall of the Pierce the Earth Guild castle, excitedly recounting his assassination attempt. "In the nick of time, I burst from the ground, opened my mouth, and bit down. Hey, it was like biting into a chicken leg. Crispy and juicy, with a delicious chicken flavor. Dude, you ate a person." "I didn't. That upper half is still in the guild warehouse." Hammer said he could find some other bones to piece it together and make a high-level skeleton soldier. "Marquis skeleton soldier, awesome!" "Yeah, it's a shame we couldn't bring back Hyde Henry's body. Otherwise, we could have made a death knight." After a few days of relaxing, Lu Daoqing set off again. This time, he planned to travel to the underground depths of the Thrace capital to sever the Thrace kingdom's dragon vein. During his last infiltration of the Henry family's underground, almost illusory dragon vein, he figured the dragon vein of the Silius kingdom would be much clearer, much more substantial. Severing it would cause immense trouble for the Silius kingdom, perhaps even lead to its collapse. Unfortunately, his magical power was limited. Even with his utmost effort, he could sever the Silius dragon vein. This was rather awkward. Undeterred, Lu Daoqing reasoned that if he couldn't sever the Silius kingdom's dragon vein, he could sever those of the great nobles instead. He subconsciously arrived at the Marquis Henry's territory and without hesitation, severed the Henry family's dragon vein. This time, he succeeded. "Hey ha!" Watching the slowly disintegrating dragon vein of fortune in the underground water vein, Yu Long Yadao threw his arms back, laughed uproariously to the heavens, and declared with smug satisfaction, "What's a clean sweep? This is a clean sweep! Killing just your family isn't enough. To truly achieve a clean sweep, you have to wipe out the entire clan." In the midst of his triumphant laughter, he suddenly frowned, sensing an impending danger of immense proportions. He opened his system lock. A clear message appeared: "You have destroyed someone's fortune and suffered severe backlash." "Damn it," Lu Daoqing yelled, reverting to his original form and fleeing frantically through the water vein. But no matter where he fled, he felt an overwhelmingly strong sense of crisis. And it was growing stronger. "No! Can't stay underground! I have to get to the surface!" Lu Daoqing immediately found a water vein exit and rushed towards the surface. Before he could reach the surface, he felt the ground tremble, followed by a dizzying spin as the world went dark. He didn't know what hit him, but he passed out instantly. In Ilan's castle, feeling the tremor, the Duchess frowned and looked at her teacher. The sage who charted the lands muttered an incantation. The seemingly decorative map in his study shimmered, and a small point of light appeared. The legendary mage paused slightly, saying with interest, "It seems some treasure or beast has appeared." "Of course!" Katharina Ilance jumped excitedly. "Where? Let's go, let's go!" A few days later, the Ilance family's strongest members, forming an expedition, finally found the beast in a deep mountain range. It was a strange creature with a ferocious head and shimmering whiskers, pinned beneath a mountain peak. Only its head was visible, and it was weakly cursing. "That heartless Wang Tuhao! I've been cursed and sealed beneath this mountain." And not only did he plastered the mountain peak with notes, does he think him Sun Wukong? Katrina leaned in curiously, seeing numerous slips of paper, large and small, affixed to the mountain above him. The largest bore 6 characters she could decipher. The others read things like Qing Yu Chong, Monkey King Fan. Persist for 500 years, unwavering in your inner cultivation, reform yourself and become a new person. Arsonist, life, and even crushed beneath a mountain, I'm still a salted fish. She couldn't help but laugh. What exactly are you? How did you end up trapped under a mountain? Liu Docking managed to lift his head, his eyes widening in shock. Katrina. Am I dreaming? Even monsters know me. A surge of pride washed over her. Katrina was startled. Do we know each other? Of course we do. I am. Liu Docking almost blurted out. I'm your fan, then caught himself. That would surely scare her off. Panicked, he blurted. I've waited 500 years for you. Why have you only arrived now? What? You've waited 500 years. I'm only 18. The reason isn't important. Can you rescue me? I'm very powerful, compared to my teacher, who is more powerful. Your teacher is slightly more skilled, but give me a few decades and I'll surpass them. You haven't surpassed my teacher in 500 years. Why would a few decades make a difference? I was trapped under a mountain for 500 years! So you're saying that even after another 500 years you would improve if I didn't rescue you, more or less. Fine. Goodbye. Katrina turned and walked away. Liu Docking's eyes widened. He shouted, hey, don't go! Why aren't you playing by the rules? Because I'm already powerful and don't need a powerful monster as a subordinate. Katrina stopped, turned around and smiled at him. Compared to that, a monster trapped under a mountain is far more interesting. Hey, rescue me! I can do a lot for you. What can me be clear? I don't need help with battles. I can summon storms and rain. Catalina shook her head. Interesting. I can summon all kinds of natural disasters. Catalina sighed. Even worse. I can make healing potion. Catalina yawned, turned, and began to walk away. I'm not fighting anyone. What would I need healing potions for? Seeing that she was really about to leave, Liu Docking in a moment of inspiration shouted, I can make desserts! Catalina, who was about to leave, stop. What did you say? Liu Docking remembered that in the game, Catalina's character profile listed a fondness for sweets. He shouted, I can make lots and lots of desserts! Surprise flickered in Catalina's eyes. Then, how can I save you? Liu Docking let out a long sigh of relief, secretly resolving that once he escaped this predicament he would definitely find San Yu to learn culinary arts. This episode is complete. Welcome to subscribe, turn on the small bell forward, please leave your comments. I will continue to update the content behind.